All right, guys, yo, it's me, Slimmy V, over here. This is the most offensive podcast ever. Okay, I was looking up on the internet and I came across a couple of videos with Matt Walsh, who is the author of a best selling LGBTQ book by the name of Johnny the Walrus. I am not going to go into that, but it's basically about a kid who imagines himself to be different types of species. And he came up and he sort of gravitated towards being a walrus. His mom, who is a progressive, was kind of confused and said, "So you really feel like you're a walrus?" And took steps to take Johnny to the doctor to have a medical procedure to make Johnny into a walrus. In the end, not to give it away. This is just like a synopsis. The book is basically about just because your child have a very vivid imagination and they might feel one thing this week, they might feel like another thing the next month or the next year. This is part of growing up. Um, and that's part of being a child. This is just who we are as people. So, Matt Walsh, who is the author of this book and part of the whole Ben Shapiro cast, has gone on other shows to debate people. And I found these debates really interesting. And one in particular about a trans person that shows up to one of his events didn't actually come to debate him, but actually came to kind of say, hey, you know what? Let me just let you watch this for yourself because this is something that a lot of transgenders refuse to acknowledge. Check it out.
So I'd like to say that I'm actually a part of that organization that was going to come and try and derail you tonight. I didn't hear a single thing, though, that constituted an attack on queer or trans lives or an attack on me personally. So I don't know what they were on about there. Moreover, everything that you have said on gender identity, gender expression, John Money, pronoun usage, what else? The sex gender distinction, you are 100% correct.
Wow.
You are 100% correct. I don't know if you've ever heard that from a trans person before. I identify as a trans woman. You are 100% correct on that. And it is an absolute travesty that the trans community bases everything on such vacuous concepts.
This is coming from a transgender. This should be front page news. He's actually speaking with Matt Walsh, who has been known as transphobe. And he's telling him, look, the way you are approaching this, like basically it's more in a respectful manner. And what you're saying, I don't find it to be transphobic. He actually respects Matt Walsh's perspective and point of view enough to come on live television. But why isn't he the basically poster child for transgenders? Because he's admitting that what Matt Walsh says and his views on transgenderism is absolutely 100% correct. Let's continue.
My thing is I don't agree with your conclusion. I don't agree with it. But more so the reason why I don't is less a matter of argumentation and more so a matter of method. You've stated time and time again that your approach to this is to try and keep things simple and uncomplicated. As in, you don't try and engage with the nuance of the position of trans people. But that's exactly how my org treats you. They don't think that your arguments are worth looking at because they cast you as a transphobe. I did otherwise, and I looked, I'm like, yeah, no, this guy's absolutely correct on all these things.
So which conclusion are you? You said you disagree with my conclusions.
Well, it's the conclusion that of the model that you're postulating of gender. Of it's just this, you have man, woman, they're biologically contingent. My sort of question is, do you think that defaulting to simplicity, if this is the most dire issue of the age, which is something else that I agree with you on, do you really think that a method of simply recoursing to the most simplistic matter of approach is what we should be doing here?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah, I do. Because, I mean,
and he's going from an emotional, deep and personal point of view. Matt Walsh is basically, there are two genders, male and female. There are two different type of species. We are able to reproduce. When one get together with the other, we can reproduce. That's as simple as you can get. One have a penis, one have a vagina. Simple. That's it. All the other intricate details and nuances of what he wants to go on, that's not what Matt Walsh, because that's a personal belief. And Matt Walsh is just saying, nah, look, I can't tell you what to believe, but we can go according to like basic biological science. That's it. That's it. And then Matt Walsh is absolutely correct. You don't have to demean the person. You don't have to disrespect them. You don't have to put them down. You don't have to call them names, but you simply state the fact. And Ben Shapiro have this phrase, fact don't care about your feelings. It's not about feelings. It's about what is correct and what is incorrect. Let's continue.
I appreciate I appreciate everything that you said. And I appreciate your attitude. I very rarely encounter your attitude from that side of the ideological aisle. So I appreciate that. But yeah, I do think that making it simple is the right approach, because to my view, it is a very simple question. Now, if you want to get into the personal experiences of each individual, and someone who is who's experiencing gender dysphoria, and what do we do to treat that problem? Sure, there's all kinds of personal, subjective nuances and things like that. If my child came to me and said that they were confused about their identity, I wouldn't just say, get out of my face. I would want to sit down and talk to them. And that's when you get into, that becomes a sort of an interpersonal exchange. And so you get into some of those personal nuances and everything, and that's fine. But the underlying fact, the underlying reality is simple, that there are only males and females in the human race. There are no other categories. There is no third sex. It doesn't exist. Even though we hear about intersex people, an actual intersex person would be someone who has the reproductive capacities of both men and women, males and females. Such a person has never existed, ever.
I've heard that all my life, right? And I never looked deep into it. I am learning some new stuff right now. And I hope you are too. It's really just male and females that exist.
So what I see here is a binary system, and in that way it's very simple, and I think that has to be our message. Yeah.
I would still even say, respective to that even if from your standpoint, there's only this binary, there's two. There's complexities and nuances even within social navigation that still might be worth you looking into. I would also say that a lot of your facts also are off. Respective to, for instance, the first sexual reassignment surgery actually happened in the 1920s. So that was before John Money. So it's not a case that
I didn't say his was the first.
What?
I didn't say his was the first. It was probably the first one done on a 2-year-old, but I said he was the one who invented. You started by saying you agree with everything I said, and now we're going back and you disagree. I'm a little confused now.
My point is that if you have it to where you can get to a different conclusion from the same arguments, it means that there might be something deeper going on here that for people who are actually philosophers, not rhetoricians, need to be dealing with.
Okay, we got to move to the next question, but let me just ask you this so we can clarify where we are. Do you agree that there are only males and females in the human race?
No.
Okay, so you definitely don't agree with my conclusion then at all. We actually are totally on opposite sides of this question, it turns out. Okay, so what are the other categories if not male and female?
We're going to be here all night if I have to doing that.
We're not, because there's none that you can list. So it's actually a very short conversation.
All right. Well, you're wanting to say that you have these other social categories, right? It's a question of, you're saying are, right? So the question here for me would be one of ontology, insofar as we're trying to posit that there is some kind of specificity, right? And you would look at something like intersex and say that this is like some kind of weird border case, right? It's a question of the kind of continuum that would allow for one to come into an embodiment that you would cast as male and female. I mean, something that's really interesting is you said that something like age is makes more sense to identify as. You at one point had female genitalia when you were in utero. So you've passed through that, right? And what happens to intersex people is that there's just some kind of like different there's a different of development that occurs there. So respective to us talking about these categories, it's not a case of there being this hard line thing. I mean, the reason why we also are not going to get anywhere here is because I actually would agree with you that something like woman is what would, in a technical sense, be called a floating signifier. So it doesn't have this like particular designatable meaning to it, right?
All right.
So that's why we're not going to go anywhere.
Yo, when someone like Matt Walsh is using logic, using standard biology, you cannot go up against someone like Matt Walsh. That's more, he's level-headed type of commonsensical thinking person. That type of particular mindset beats any other mindset any day of the week. This is why that transgender had no answers. Because once you ask them a straight up answer, and you say yes or no, he's stuck. You ask him, okay, if not male and female, what else is there? He can't give you an answer. This signifies, look, there are things that happen in this world. We are born imperfect, right? Most likely it's like, okay, look, as God, I'm like, okay, I want males and I want females. Boom, 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 boom. Now, when I allow humans who have been tainted by sin, right, to continually reproducing themselves, they don't eat the way they're supposed to eat. They are hit by some type of biological, agents. They might have what is called two-headed beings, right? People born certain ways. What do we call those? We call it, that's a deformity. We don't say that's normal. That don't fall into the category of what's normal. It falls into the category of abnormal and needs to either surgically be fixed, or maybe they live out their lives like this but they're not normal. Let me go into another. Okay, this is awkward. Another Matt Walsh has to educate biology student on biology. This is kind of like a nice little short, good debate I definitely want to share with you guys. I think you might find this thing very interesting. Matt Walsh did it again. He does his thing, man. This is what, when you get into debates, learn how to debate. Learn your facts. Learn to debate on the specific facts. Don't go on the nuances. Keep it simple, just like how Matt does it. Okay? All right. Let me get down and dirty on this one, and let's see what he's about on this.
Hi, I thought you had some really good points, but I just wanted to ask you about...
Notice how everyone that comes seems to actually acknowledge, you had some really good points. It's because of how he approached it. he is not coming brimfire and just casting stones into anything. He acknowledged, you know what, there might be some type of mental illness or something is going wrong that they feel this way. So I feel for them. So he's coming with empathy, like, damn, you know what, I feel for you. But here's my take on it. And now I'm going to go straight biology. I'm going to give it to you straight. I'm not going to disrespect you. And they seem to kind of like his approach. Although there may be some very extreme transgenders or people with that type of ideology who might be offended no matter what. And if they're all offended no matter what, there's nothing you could really do about it but keep your composure, stay respectful, keep with the facts, don't deviate. You know, don't give them what they want. If you don't be that transphobe, someone that's like, oh, you belong in hell and stuff. Nah, don't say things like that, because that's when you start to lose. Okay, so let's listen to what this student of biology had to say to Matt, and check it out, because Matt, he educated himself on these type of issues, and now he's going up against a biology student and educates her on something that she should have known.
About hybrids and stuff, because
Wait,
I'm here. Good point.
Check it out.
Hi, I thought you had some really good points, but I just wanted to ask you about hybrids and stuff, because I'm here studying biology, and so we've learned a lot about genetic mutations and disorders and such, and there actually are hermaphrodite human beings where they have both ovaries and testicles, and that, I have it right here. It's actually a medical condition called ovotesticular disorder, and there are also other genetic disorders where people are born with XXY, XY, or just X or just Y and such. And while it may seem rare, there are hundreds of thousands of people born with this each year. And so going off of your fairy tale hybrid people, they do exist. And so I'm just wondering how that would play into your view of there being a spectrum of gender, because
These are people who can get pregnant and also impregnate someone else?
Yes. Hermaphrodites, they have both ovaries and testicles.
No.
This is where I kind of needed to be educated more on this, because I don't know the deep, intricate biological details, whether hermaphrodites can both pregnant or become pregnant. Like, I don't know the details. So if I were to have a debate with someone about this stuff, I would be stuck on this. But to know this, and I would say, don't just listen to this debate. Do your own research on it and find out for yourself. That way you know how to give your counterpoints when approaching a debate like this. I think it's really, really important.
If such a person existed, that would certainly, I would not include that part in my next speech. But such a person does not exist. Now, intersex and now the genetic deformities you're talking about obviously do exist, and I expected someone to bring that up in the Q&A. I think it's a fine point to bring up. Two things I would say to that. Number one, that actually has nothing to do with transgenderism, because when when we talk about transgender, we're talking specifically about intersex people, then we would just say intersex. But with transgender, most of the time, we're talking about men who, they don't have any deformity. They are just straight up men, clearly, and they are identifying as a woman. So even if I agreed that what you're talking about is some sort of exception, that actually would have nothing to do with the transgender topic. But I don't think it is an exception, because, as I said, I think a true a true resident of the middle circle of the Venn diagram would be someone who has the reproductive capabilities of both genders. And no one like that exists. I mean, not to be crude, but there isn't anyone who can get themselves pregnant, right? And that doesn't exist in the human kingdom anyway. So I think what you're talking about there are people who have deformities, and so in their case, it would be more difficult than usual to determine what their actual biological sex is, because the usual indicators aren't there or aren't as obvious. But that doesn't mean that they don't have a biological sex. It's just not as clear.
Wow. that's all I really got to say, and I kind of wanted to share this with you. Do your homework on these things because this is a spiritual battle. They are trying to infiltrate the minds of our children and making them think things that's not real, that's not based on science, not based on biology, not based on how God created you to be. Um, there are deformities. Yes, things happen. Look, we're human. We make mistakes. We fall into sin. Um, we're not perfect. Things happen, and I think we got to be aware of it and be truthful with ourselves and the way we think. With the last debate that I had showed you, the guy was truthful. Um, with Matt Walsh being correct on everything. Of course, he deviated from it because I think he was getting his arguments kind of confused and mixed up. But in the end, Matt Walsh prevailed. And again, man, do your studies, man. There's only male and female. That's it. That's it, man. Are there mistakes? Does it mean God make mistakes? No. God gave us free wills. We produce. We make decisions. You might be next to a nuclear plant, and the way your body is getting exposed to these type of ultraviolets and things, it can screw us up. Okay, so look, man, do your homework, man. Let's stop being brainwashed. Let's stop brainwashing our children. Let's have a better planet. Yeah, it doesn't mean that you have to hate transgender people, gay people, lesbians, things like that, non-binary, whatever they are. It doesn't mean you have to hate them. What we need to do is educate them. What we need to do is start with the children because that's who Satan is coming for. That's who they're coming for. They want the children. This is why they're aiming for public schools, teachers. You have them in politics. You have them making laws and passing legislation to include teaching children about things that they have no business learning about. So, look, share this video. Have a discussion with your family. Have a debate with your friends. Be friendly about it. This is just about learning each other and learning as to what they believe in and why they believe in the things that they do. Okay? Again, hey, hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed already. I'm going to be doing a lot of these type of videos. Okay? I like to have deep rooted conversation. Things that involve you getting really down and dirty. But when you leave as friends. All right? This is all about learning about people's differences. Okay? I'm Slimmy V. This is the most offensive podcast. If you're not offended, you probably wasn't watching or listening. God bless, stress less, and let Yahweh do the rest. I'm out. Peace.